A few hours before, Yamamoto's life turned upside down. With a brush in hand, he was focused on scrubbing the bathroom tiles. Right after, his attention turned to the drain, which he meticulously cleaned. That was our protagonist, a first-year university student. Amid his routine cleaning, he found it strangely satisfying to see the dirt vanish. Sitting on a stool, he was preparing to give the final touches, convinced he'd leave the bathroom spotless. Our hero thought cleaning was amazing because the more he put in effort, the cleaner everything got. Cleaning, according to him, always rewarded effort, unlike people who could be irrational and unfair. After finishing, he wiped his sweat and, smiling, told himself the feeling was incredible. However, when he looked at his phone, he was startled by the time. After all, he needed to head to his part-time job. Still, he noted that although night shifts paid better, the store was in a residential area and hardly got any customers at night, which made things quieter. And, well, already at work, with his face resting on his hand, he thought about how boring it all was. Sitting in front of the checkout computer, he reflected that even for a night shift, things were slower than usual, and he even wondered if the store could survive like that. But something on one of the security cameras caught his eye. He saw the silhouette of a customer entering the store. Soon the customer approached the checkout and placed her purchases on the counter. However, he was quickly caught off guard when the customer called him by name. She remarked it had been a while since they last met, and he instantly recognized the voice with ease. Our hero was in shock, barely believing who was standing in front of him. It was her, a former classmate from high school. Her name was Hayashi. He couldn't believe she was living in Tokyo, too. Hayashi then asked if he lived nearby, and he replied that he lived in a nearby apartment, returning the question. With a slight smile, she confirmed that, in a way, she did too. Next, she asked what university he was attending, and upon hearing it was University K, she complimented him, saying it was impressive and that he had always been smart. That interaction left him completely perplexed, and he wondered why on earth Hayashi was making small talk with him. While scanning her items, he noted that something like this would never have happened in high school. It had only been 4 months since graduation, and she seemed completely changed. His mind then took him back to their high school days, remembering what Hayashi was like back then. In his memory, she appeared in class, yawning, without caring about anything around her. Suddenly, an eraser fell from her desk. Quickly, he turned his face, looking at the object beside him. Meanwhile, the girl gazed absent-mindedly out the window, her face resting on her hand, completely unaware of her belongings. At that moment, a dilemma popped into his head, and he wondered if he should pick up the eraser or just ignore it. Muttering, he decided it was better to pick it up, imagining that if he didn't, she'd probably complain later. So he bent down and picked the eraser off the floor. However, when he turned around, he was startled because she was staring at him with disgust. Still, he placed the eraser on her desk, saying she had dropped it. Her reaction, however, was pure disdain. Our hero was completely bewildered by her response and wondered what was wrong with that girl. Despite everything, he remembered that in high school she had a pretty face, lots of friends, and was always popular, with boys constantly confessing to her. He even recalled witnessing one of those confessions get rejected. In his memories, a boy confessed to Hayashi. Yamamoto, on the other hand, said he could never understand what others saw in her. The boy who confessed seemed extremely shy, anxiously waiting for a response. Her reaction, however, was full of scorn. She placed her hand on her hip and let out a frustrated scream, leaving the boy completely stunned. Because of such attitudes, at some point, she earned the nickname the Arrogant Queen. Back to the present, he concluded he had no good memories of her and that it was best not to get involved. So, sticking strictly to his job, he asked if she needed a bag. However, glancing away for a moment, something caught his attention. Her wrist revealed bruises. Shocked by what he saw, he gestured toward her arm. Caught off guard, Hayashi quickly grabbed it, trying to hide the marks. Worried, he asked what had happened to her arm. She, in turn, just looked away. remaining silent and visibly uncomfortable. Nervously, she gripped the sleeve of her shirt tightly. In his thoughts, he found it odd that she was wearing long sleeves in the middle of summer. He concluded that it wasn't normal and that she was probably hiding something even worse underneath. His concern grew, and he was sure that whatever was hidden under that blouse had to be more serious. Then, with a melancholic smile, she confessed that she had been hit and that the one responsible was her boyfriend. The revelation left him completely paralyzed. Trying to find out more, he asked about her boyfriend. Soon she explained that he was at home and that they lived together. However, Hayashi didn't seem to care, and acting like her old self, turned her face away, annoyed by his questions. Then she scolded him, saying he always talked too much. Without saying another word, she turned and walked toward the exit, leaving him behind. With that, he concluded with a sigh that she always hated him, and he tried not to care about the situation. However, her words echoed in his mind. He remembered how she had confessed her boyfriend hit her and wondered why, of all people, she had told him that. Then it hit him. He asked himself if the feared queen had shown him a vulnerable side, but he soon panicked upon realizing she was going back home, fearing her boyfriend might hurt her again. Driven by impulse, he called out to her with a hesitant voice. Then he leaned over the counter and shouted for her to stop. Determined, he made an unexpected offer, telling her to stay at his place that night. Her reaction, however, was filled with anger, and upon noticing his expression, she misinterpreted everything, thinking he had ulterior motives, when in fact, he only wanted to help. With his hands raised in surrender, he tried to explain, assuring her he wouldn't do anything and that if she didn't trust him, he'd give her his spare key and spend the night at a cyber cafe. Our hero simply insisted that she not go back home that night, or better yet, that she look for her parents and return to their house. But the girl revealed that her parents had disowned her, which left him completely shocked. She then explained that when she told them she'd be living with her boyfriend, her parents flipped out and threatened to cut her off. Because of that, she ended up dropping out of college. With that, a heavy silence fell over the place as the two remained standing in front of the counter. Still, letting out a sigh, he insisted that she shouldn't go back home that night. He then said he'd get the spare key and would also send her the address by text. However, to his surprise, she declined, saying she didn't need the key, which left him confused. Hayashi then said she would wait, and with her head down, she finally clarified that she would wait until his shift ended. As she spoke, her hands nervously twisted a lock of her hair, revealing her anxiety. Then, he said his shift would end in about an hour and suggested she read a magazine or something to pass the time. While waiting, he remembered how Hayashi was in high school, the queen, who was always surrounded by people and seemed loved by everyone. However, he thought that image didn't match the girl standing there now. The sight of the bruises on her arm came back to his mind. It left him completely speechless. Shortly after, they arrived at the building where he lived. Upon entering, he bragged about how tidy the place was, but she, with her usual bluntness, commented that it looked more like empty. He then asked her to sit and said he would get her some barley tea. As the ice cracked in the glass, he thought that, even at that moment, Hayashi's presence in his room felt completely unreal. Soon he concluded that even though everything had happened naturally, the situation still made him extremely nervous, even if he had no intention of doing anything with her. She then picked up the glass and drank the barley tea in a quick gulp. Breaking the silence, Hayashi remarked with a slight smile that she couldn't believe she now owed him a favor. He, on the other hand, said he didn't see it that way, since he had just done what anyone would have done. She then started to open up and said they both needed time to cool off. Trying to understand better, he then asked if her boyfriend was just in a bad mood. With a somber expression, she confirmed, explaining that he didn't usually hit her, and that it only happened when things went badly at work, so she said she should support him better. Surprised, our hero commented that this wasn't something the Hayashi from school would have said. Annoyed, she told him to shut up, saying people change. Her words made him thoughtful, and he reflected on her idea of hoping it was just a bad day. With that, he said that if her story was really true, maybe he shouldn't have told her not to go home. However, ignoring his thoughts, He said she could spend the night there. Surprised, she thanked him. Still teasing him, she remarked that he too was saying things he never would have in high school. She then asked if she could use his shower, and he agreed. Next, she wanted to know if he had anything she could wear, but he replied that he only had men's clothes. While she went to the bathroom, he remained seated at the table, waiting in silence. Suddenly, the sound of the shower began to echo through the apartment. The running water made him imagine Hayashi in the shower. A drop of sweat ran down his face, and he couldn't hide how nervous he felt. The image of the queen from school invaded his mind, and he could hardly believe Hayashi was showering in his house. Yamamoto then looked at his watch and thought that maybe he should change too. His thoughts, however, were interrupted when Hayashi stepped out of the bathroom, saying the shower had been really good. He turned and, visibly flustered, could only stammer. Smiling as she dried her hair with a towel, she commented that his bathroom was way too clean. However, when he glanced downward, his eyes widened in pure shock at what he saw, because her legs, now exposed, were covered in multiple bruises. He then remarked regretfully that it looked really bad. Hayashi, in turn, just said her boyfriend was a lost cause. Worried, he pointed out that the bruises looked old. Her response, however, was cold and defensive. With a distant look, she just asked what that mattered. Her reaction was a clear warning sign, and he, holding his glass, understood that look meant not to press the subject. Even so, he decided he needed to say something and remarked that she shouldn't be with someone like that. She then fired back, asking what he could possibly know about her situation. He backed off a bit, saying he didn't know anything, and that it was just his opinion, and the decision to listen or not was entirely hers. Still, with his eyes closed, he explained that if something happened to her, people would ask why he didn't stop her, and the blame would fall on him. And while she clenched her teeth, he stated he was saying it for her own good. With a serious expression, he asked if she really still wanted to support someone who hit her when stressed. With that, he wondered when she had become that way. Our hero remembered how he used to hate her, but now saw that few people could live so selflessly, concluding that she was just being used. Imagining it would all be for nothing, he was suddenly overcome with anger. Despite everything, he said that if she still wanted to go back, he wouldn't stop her. Hearing his words, Hayashi just looked away. Immediately, he regretted what he had said. He thought it was a reflex and wondered if he had gone too far. Sure, she would definitely get upset. Even so, he resigned himself to the situation, thinking that if she didn't take his words seriously, there was nothing else he could do. Then, with a sad smile, hugging her knees, Hayashi agreed that it would all be awful. Changing the subject, he said he was getting sleepy and offered his bed for her to sleep in, saying he'd sleep on the floor. She, in turn, thanked him as she got under the covers. As he moved away, he watched her. Our hero advised her not to rush, saying she should take some time to think about everything. She then teased him, saying he sounded like an enlightened monk and that it was no wonder he never got a girlfriend. He, in turn, wondered if that was why he was still single. Without saying another word, he pulled the curtain, leaving the room in complete darkness. A short while later, he threw himself on the floor and even in the cold began to fall asleep. The night went on, and the two remained in their separate spaces. However, Yamamoto soon muttered that there was no way he could fall asleep. Suddenly, Hayashi turned and looked at him. Her expression was unreadable. She then called out to him, breaking the silence of the room. Next, she turned toward him and, in a soft voice, made a shocking suggestion, asking if he wanted to do it. Hearing that, Yamamoto's eyes widened. He panicked, stammering and asking what she meant by it. Desperate, he explained that he had only let her stay on impulse and that he hadn't intended anything else. Sweating cold, he wondered if she was just messing with him. Suddenly, his body was wrapped in an unexpected hug and he let out a scream. Then, Hayashi started laughing and surprised he asked what she was doing. With a subtle movement, she slid her leg over his, getting even closer. Completely confused, he asked if she had hugged him just to see if he was awake. Totally embarrassed, he asked who had given her permission to hug him, but whispering in his ear, she said it was just a hug. He considered for a moment mentioning her boyfriend, but quickly realized it wasn't the right time and swallowed the thought. Breaking the silence, Hayashi looked him straight in the eyes and asked if he was a virgin. The question caught him off guard, and embarrassed, he looked away, unsure how to answer. Trying to keep his composure, he denied it, but she immediately called him a liar. Still, she said his reaction was, in a way, cute. Completely embarrassed, he told her to shut up, and on impulse, he grabbed her wrist. His expression, however, turned serious. Hayashi then started to open up, saying her boyfriend wasn't always like that, and that he used to be kind and attentive, doing everything she wanted. She went on, explaining that everything changed once they started living together. The poor girl confessed that he began hitting her whenever his mood shifted, even when it wasn't because of work. She tried to justify it, saying his feelings were just confused. A painful memory then came to mind, where he humiliated her for not earning money. But when she offered to work, he belittled her, questioning what someone with only a high school diploma could even do. After the confession, a heavy silence fell over the room. Then, Hayashi remarked that it wasn't a very fun story, and with a melancholic smile told him to go to sleep. Ignoring her suggestion, Yamamoto simply said, with empathy, that she had been through a lot. His words caught her completely off guard, and her eyes widened in shock. Confused, she asked what he had said, but Yamamoto, embarrassed, asked her to forget it. However, she insisted, asking him to repeat it, but he just sighed and told her to go to sleep. With a faint smile, she called him a lost cause, and he, still flustered, retorted, asking who she thought she was. His face turned bright red, and he couldn't hide how embarrassed he was. A genuine smile then formed on the girl's lips. Getting closer to him, she whispered that it had been a long time since she had heard something like that. And so, unexpectedly, the two began living together. The next morning, our hero groaned as he slowly woke up. As he sat up, he wondered why he was sleeping on the floor. Suddenly, he was surprised, and his gaze was immediately drawn to the girl lying next to him. He saw Hayashi sleeping soundly, and the memories of the previous night came rushing back. With a sigh, he remembered why he was in that situation. Watching her peaceful face, he couldn't help but think how drastically she had changed since their high school days. A little later, the sound of vegetables sizzling in the pan broke the morning silence. The noise in the kitchen woke Hayashi, who grumbled and stretched slowly. Still groggy, she watched him in the kitchen, and little by little, the memories of the previous night came back to her. Tired, she wished him good morning and complained that her whole body was sore from sleeping on the floor. He, in turn, said he had insisted that she use the bed and that there was no need for such sacrifice on her part. Curious about the smell, she came closer and asked if he was making yakisoba, and he confirmed. Surprised, she asked if he knew how to cook. He modestly replied that he knew a little and asked her to wait as the food was almost ready. Still a bit skeptical, she asked again if he was sure. Shortly after, 2 steaming plates of yakisoba were served on the table. The noodles looked delicious. Without hesitation, Hayashi grabbed a generous portion and started eating enthusiastically. With her cheeks full, she chewed eagerly and, with shining eyes, said it was amazing. Distracted with his phone, he thanked her for the compliment, but soon after teased her, saying she had terrible manners. He then apologized, explaining that the habit of using his phone during meals came from living alone for so long. After finishing her meal, with hands clasped in a gesture of gratitude, she thanked him for the food, saying it was really good. He, however, tried to downplay the compliment, saying he had just followed the instructions on the package. Annoyed, she scolded him, telling him not to ruin the compliment she had just given, and he, embarrassed, apologized. Next, she offered to wash the dishes, but he stopped her, saying she was a guest. Hayashi insisted, saying it was her way of paying for the food and shelter, but he, irritated, told her to shut up, saying it was unnecessary. Changing the subject, the girl asked if he had a hair tie, but he said no, though he mentioned having rubber bands if she wanted. She complained, asking if he knew what happened when you tied your hair with a rubber band, explaining that it hurt and pulled out strands. He defended himself, saying he had no way of knowing, and offered plastic ties instead. And with that, she ended up accepting. Holding the elastic with her mouth, she began tying her hair into a ponytail. Meanwhile, Yamamoto watched her in silence. After that, she went to the kitchen and started washing the dishes. Lying down, he looked at his phone, but his thoughts were on her, and he wished she could at least relax while she was there. Shortly after, the two sat at the table, and he said it was time to talk about the next steps. With a serious expression, he stated that, in the end, everything would depend on what she wanted to do. Head down, she agreed, but confessed she was afraid of regretting making the wrong choice. He then advised her to try to look at the situation objectively to decide what she wanted, so there wouldn't be regrets. However, she asked how he could be so sure of that. She explained that it wasn't always possible to see things objectively, and that sometimes people were just overwhelmed by emotion. With teary eyes, she concluded it was impossible to say someone would never regret a decision. Our hero disagreed, saying it wasn't impossible, but she insisted it was. He then reassured her, promising she would be okay, but skeptically, she asked how he could know that, and well, his answer left her flustered, as he simply said it was easy, and with a thumbs up, he declared that's exactly why he was there. With that, an awkward silence settled between them. Realizing he might have overdone it, a bead of sweat began to roll down his face. He then composed himself and explained that if she was afraid to decide alone, she should talk to someone, and offered to listen. Teasing him, she said that didn't suit him at all, and he almost seemed like someone trustworthy. However, he immediately said he was just being selfish and trying to impose his own opinions. Then, she covered her mouth